I had worked so hard by myself and for so long in that game. I was so excited to get it out. The sales weren't anything near what the Might and Magic, RPG line was doing. Okay, all right, I'll make another one. I'll try again. Someone said, or the marketing team said, hey, why don't we call it Heroes of Might and Magic? And I'm like, well, it has nothing to do with Might and Magic. Originally the game was single player, but being able to have another human to play against was something very cool. I started to do some design on what it might be like, but I was like, I can't do that.
Hey everyone, if you're a fan of Heroes of Might and Magic, especially the old games, I don't think I have to introduce my guest to you. But in case your Heroes knowledge is a bit rusty, this is Jon Van Caneghem, the creator of Might and Magic, as well as Heroes of Might and Magic, the series that's been alive for over 30 years, even though its fate was never that certain. I had a chance to talk to Jon recently because of his newly announced involvement with Olden Era, the upcoming Heroes game from Unfrozen. But before we get to discussing what the original creator of Heroes will be doing with the franchise that's been out of his hands since Heroes 4, we need to go back to the early days. And that's long before the idea for Heroes was even alive.
I was a gamer as a kid growing up and played a lot of board games and RPGs, and came across early computers, and I saw games on computers and I thought, this is amazing. I used to tell people, well, we got together on Saturdays to play board games, and it was very difficult to get people together, and I was like, wow, with a computer I could play every day. I could just play all I wanted. So that was my hobby, and then I thought, wow, I want to make one of these. I want to make my own RPG, and I had all these ideas for game rules and how to do the mechanics, and I wanted a world to explore. I wanted all this stuff, and then I was up against, well, I had to learn to program, and I didn't know what the computer could do or couldn't do. And so a lot of it was driven by the exploration and learning of the technology. And then I sat back and I said, okay, well, it can do this. So these are the things I could put into it. There wasn't classes or books or school on the programming. You had to figure it all out. It was very much trial and error. And I had to learn this crazy thing called assembly language. And I'm working with bits and bytes and computer hardware, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get through this? But the drive to make a game just kept me going, and it was actually almost a puzzle game in itself to figure out how to get pixels on the screen or sounds out of the speaker and everything else. So that was a lot of fun. It was the challenge of figuring that out.
Back in those days, there weren't that many games, and access to information about how everything was made was of course limited. But when Jon was working on the first Might and Magic RPG, he surely had some inspirations. After all, Ultima and Wizardry were the big things back then.
Yeah, actually the two you mentioned were probably the biggest inspirations for me. And like most gamers, you play the games that are out there, and I played them to death. And then I started asking questions. Well, why can't it do this? Or why can't we do that? Or can we make it bigger? And I had all these ideas from my other gaming experience that I'm like, well, wouldn't it be great? And then that's when I delved into the tech part of it. And I started to learn why they had the size and the limitations and the technology they had used.
So finally the time came and Jon released Might and Magic Book 1, The Secret of the Inner Sanctum. The game is set in the world of Varn, and it focuses on 6 adventurers who attempt to discover the secret of the Inner Sanctum. Inspired by D&D, the adventurers are actually 6 character classes, and obviously it all ties into the original inspiration by the tabletop RPGs. You choose the race, gender, and alignment for all the characters, but it had various level of influence on the game itself. What is important is that the first game took Jon 3 years to make, and he basically did all of it on his own.
I had worked so hard by myself and for so long in that game. I was so excited to get it out to players, and the feedback was just amazing. People were just loving it, and I was so happy that they liked it. And I had my friends who we played on weekends play it for me and try it out, and they were addicted. So I'm like, all right, this is going to go well. And it was exciting. I mean, the whole industry was just so new that you just made stuff up. You didn't even know, there was no guidelines or rules.
Might and Magic got 9 games in the series done by New World Computing. There is a 10th game in the series released in 2014, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. While the Might and Magic series was selling really well, and Jon knew that he obviously had to continue working on it, especially that he had ideas for the story in advance, he wanted to try something else as well. And that's how King's Bounty came into life.
I had been making RPGs, and the Might and Magic series was very successful, but my other passion was board games and strategy games. And those were more about, 1, 2, 3 hour games that you would play over and over and over again with new settings and parameters. So I always wanted to build one. And I had this idea, for King's Bounty, and it was a culmination of lots of different things I liked in board games. And I wanted to make a computer game out of it that you could play over and over again with different parameters and starting values and difficulties. So that was my initial push. And King's Bounty came out. It was very successful from a review and reception, but the sales weren't anything near what the Might and Magic, RPG line was doing. So I thought, all right, I'll go back to what I've been doing well. I thought I did a great job, but we didn't have a big sales success with it. It was okay. I mean, it made a profit, but the Might and Magic games were very, very popular at the time. And for years, I kept, getting letters and messages and people saying, make a sequel, that game was great, we really loved it. And it took that long for me to go, okay, all right, I'll make another one. I'll try again.
And then it was a good move.
Oh, it was a great move. And actually during that time, I was obviously watching other games on the market and what people were liking. And then I took all the feedback from King's Bounty on the components that were popular. And, I came up with this, premise for Heroes and focused more on the creature stacking and the hero armies. It just started to write itself. It was a lot of fun to make too, because it was new. You were just making it up as you go along, and you try something, and some worked and some didn't. And that's probably the hardest thing of making a new game, is the trial and error.
Everyone would assume that a sequel to King's Bounty would be King's Bounty 2, obviously. But what we got instead, we now know as Heroes of Might and Magic. Why the change, Jon?
Initially, it was a marketing decision. So the game was just called Heroes at the beginning. And New World was a publisher and distributor. So we talked to the stores, directly when we wanted to release a new game. And many of the stores would say, oh, you have a new Might and Magic. And we're like, no, we have a new strategy game. It's called Heroes. And they're like, nah, I don't know, So I believe at the office, someone said, or the marketing team said, hey, why don't we call it Heroes of Might and Magic? And I'm like, well, it has nothing to do with Might and Magic. It's a strategy fantasy game. That's a role-playing series. But the moment we did that and we went back to the stores, they're like, oh, we'll take a lot of them because it's a new Might and Magic. Because most of the buyers for these stores were not as savvy gamers. They just knew what would sell, and they want to optimize their store. And so initially, we put it on so we could actually get sales. But at that point, everyone on the development team said, hey, wait a minute. If we're going to call it Might and Magic, well, we have this great wealth of lore and background and characters. Why don't we use it? And everyone was like, okay. So it started to just accelerate, and everyone got really excited on the development team to, oh, we can add this, and we can add this lore, and we can add those characters. Oh, let's name them from the game. And it started to come. It just started to make sense.
If it wasn't for the marketing decision, this game would be completely different, not only in terms of what its name was, but also in terms of what it actually was. Because it's not as simple as this game being Heroes of Might and Magic minus the whole lore.
Right, it didn't have any lore. It was just a strategy game. It was just like chess. It was just, you have some dragons, you have some orcs, and they're going to fight. And when I first started designing it, it was just strictly a strategy game. The other thing we learned, about all these games was if you can add story, it makes the game even more popular with more people. And then later on, I'm jumping ahead here, but we learned towards the end of Heroes 2 that people liked RPG elements. And we started to add RPG elements and campaigns that were more, linear stories to what I was initially just going to be a strategy game. And more people liked the game. So the audience just got bigger as we added gameplay features and lore and RPG, and it just expanded and expanded. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great.
Speaking of expanding stuff, there is one feature that became the iconic part of Heroes, and that's Hot Seat. Funny story here, due to an unfortunate translation, the name of multiplayer in the Polish version of Heroes actually translates to hot butt cheeks, in a more literal way than it should. But anyway, the multiplayer feature was not always there.
Originally the game was single player, but being able to have another human to play against was something very cool. And the internet was just starting, so the connections were not that great and slow. And but sitting together, there was another magic happened that we never thought would happen or experienced before. This hot seat concept, and I'm so glad we put it in. And a lot of people on the team were asking for it, and I'm like, all right, let's do it. And so I can't take credit for the hot seat. That was a lot of the team really wanted to have that.
With the success of both Might and Magic series as well as Heroes, New World Computing was purchased by 3DO, which at the time looked like a good move that will give Jon and the team more resources to work with. But in the end, it proved to be a double-edged sword.
Yeah, that's, I think you described it quite well. Initially, I guess you would call it the honeymoon phase. I was actually very happy with the relationship because before that, I was both running the business and the creative for New World Computing. And, I had to have arguments with myself. I want more features. You got to ship the game. Right? So it was tough, but it was fun. But the move to 3DO allowed me to say, okay, I don't have to think the business side as much anymore, and I could focus all of my time. And, some people say kind of did some of my best work with Heroes 2, 3, Might and Magic 6 during that first few years with 3DO, where they were just like, do your magic and we'll take care of the business part. And it went very, very well. Larger forces actually, played a big role in how it, eventually wound up, as opposed to anything else. The overall company started to not be doing so great, and that created pressure on all the teams within.
Before the bad stuff happened, it's like Jon said before, some of his best work comes from that time. Might and Magic was growing, Heroes of Might and Magic was gathering more and more fans all around the world, even though today we might safely say that Heroes 3 is looked at as the iconic entry in the series. There were many people who preferred Heroes 2 over 3, so it was worth a shot asking Jon about that.
Yeah, so Heroes 2, the focus for me was the strategy game and the strategy elements, and we wanted story, we wanted campaigns, and we wanted lore, but it was much more the strategy oriented. And then I think when we went to Heroes 3, we just expanded on everything. More campaign, more story, more characters, more options, and just, better computer opponent and networking for multiplayer. It just went bigger. So the experience is larger, but I think the focus of Heroes 2 was probably why some people like that one better as opposed to Heroes 3. And I was just a fanatic working on Heroes 2. I was like, every map I had to test. I had to be involved with every little bit of the data and everything. And Heroes 3, because it got so much larger, I had a bigger staff, and it was just a bigger project. So I couldn't do all the little details that I could on 2. But still, love both games.
From today's perspective, we know the end product, we know how it turned out, and we know that it was great. But there are always challenges along the way, and one of those challenges for Jon was getting the computer opponents right. And surprisingly, that doesn't mean making them the best they can be. Here's a fun story about that.
I had this whole concept of computer opponents that were like chess and computer opponents that were more enjoyable. And I came up with this concept. I called it Fun AI. And the programmers, we would argue back and forth. They wanted to make it much more like a chess algorithm. And I'm like, well, that's great, but it just beats me. It's not fun. It just comes over and beats me. And I'm like, can we make it a little more human-like? Can we make it make mistakes? Can we make it tease you, come at you, and it's going to lose, but it attacks you anyway, and it makes you feel good. You go, oh, I beat that character. Bring another one on. I want to fight another one. So I spent a lot of time with the team iterating on this concept of fun AI, and I think that's a lot of what made Heroes 2 and 3 feel fun to play, and I think it added to a lot. I mean, of course, once you get to the esport guys who were, so amazingly difficult, all that goes away. But for the majority of people who play, it was a very important aspect.
One other important aspect is expanding on what's there, and while the game originally received 2 expansions, it only introduced one new faction, and that's Conflux. Instead, the team focused on Heroes 4 as well as Heroes Chronicles, but what kept bugging me was, why no other factions for Heroes 3 when it was such a grand and well-received project?
No, it was completely time and budget. And at that time, I had, sold the company to 3DO, and they had, a roadmap that we had to deliver to, both with product and timelines, and there was budget, and we couldn't do we wanted to do new factions. I wanted to do a lot of them, but the Chronicles was basically, with the time and resources we had, this is what we could develop. But I'm with you. I wanted to add everything.
Speaking of Conflux that was added in Armageddon's Blade, it was initially planned for some time later in a different expansion. And actually a different faction called Forge was supposed to make its way into the game, and it was a faction with a concept that Jon already used in Might and Magic, a mix of sci-fi and fantasy. Forge was supposed to be this technology-oriented faction that, apart from its own units, also used other units from other factions equipped with things like guns, jetpacks, and rocket launchers. The team was hard at work to make Forge a complete and working faction that would make its way into the game and into the story of the game, but what they weren't ready for was
the backlash. Yeah, it was quite surprising to me that there was definitely a purist view of Heroes that should stay fantasy and not, bring in science fiction, which, initially that was my goal with Heroes, was just to keep it pure fantasy. And like I said, identifiable mythology. That you could go, I've heard of that character or creature from a legend of Norse or Greek or whatever. And so that was the original plan. And the backlash from the fans was amazing. I mean, I was like, wow, okay, we better take that out.
Now, to move the story forward, we need to come to the worst moment for the franchise. The studio released Heroes 4, but 3DO, the parent company that owned New World Computing, was going through financial troubles of its own, and in 2003 it had to file for bankruptcy. 3DO's assets were sold, the license for Heroes as well as Might and Magic was acquired by Ubisoft, and in the future we would see Heroes 5, 6, and 7, as well as Might and Magic 10. But while there were some good ideas here and there, the series never kept its momentum, so I had to ask Jon what his opinion was on why the series never repeated the critical success of previous games done by New World Computing.
Well, so I had an original vision and passion for what I thought Heroes is on the first few games. And I think the first example of a new concept being added to it was with Heroes 4, because I took a little step back and I let the team say, what do you want to do? And the thing that raised was put the heroes on the battlefield, which was a big change from the actual concept of what my vision on what Heroes. And I was like, if there's passion for this, let's try it, right? And I was initially skeptical, and then it turned out to be cool, but it actually moved the game to be something, to some degree, something very different. And when other teams got the IP and they were expressing their, vision and coolness to what they thought the IP and the game meant to them and their players and their fans. So I think it's also hard to judge based on either sales or things like that because of the timing and turn-based games for a long period there there wasn't a lot of popularity. But I'm happy now that it's coming back. It seems like a lot of turn-based is just coming around.
Speaking of turn-based, Heroes was a turn-based game when the hot thing out there was making real-time strategies. So was there ever a chance that Heroes would not be turn-based?
Oh yes, absolutely. So there was a point, both at the end of Heroes 2 and the end of Heroes 3, that there was a lot of pressure and suggestion from the powers that be that, hey, turn-based is dead. You should move this to real time. And I was torn. It was close because there was a lot of, well, look at the sales of the real-time games. But I eventually just kept looking at it and saying, look, this game is all about turn-based play, and I'm just going to put my foot down and say no. We're gonna keep it that way, and whatever happens, happens. And there were, I started to do some design on what it might be like, but I was like, I can't do that.
Okay, it's time to move to the new big thing. Jon Van Caneghem, the creator of Heroes of Might and Magic, is coming back to the franchise. Since Olden Era is being made by Unfrozen and the studio is so vocal about respecting the legacy of Heroes, I don't think there was ever a better moment for Jon to step back in, so I had to ask Jon about this, as well as Denis Fedorov, the CEO of Unfrozen, who himself has been a huge fan of Heroes for years, long before the studio even got a chance to make their own Heroes game. So how will this new cooperation look like?
Well, this is a very new thing that we're figuring out as we go along here. We've just started talking and working together here, and I've agreed to be an advisor on the project and see how I can help. But they've climbed this mountain, which is absolutely spectacular, and what they've had to build to get to where they are today. And I just hope I can add some help and some ideas and some direction.
Jon Van Caneghem was always a legend for me. It's like founding father. I always wanted to somehow to meet with him, to involve him somehow. It was some kind of dream, and at the same time it's some kind of great opportunity, great honor. So when we first met, we was introduced to each other. It was just, our first call was just ridiculous. And I said, oh, it is really you. I cannot imagine that.
I'm just shocked at the size and scope of the game, and that they can pull off all of that and on their first game, because I was explaining to them how it took me through 1, 2, 3, 4 games and my Magic to build up to all those features, and they're having to do it all in one on the first game, and that's a very difficult task they have, and it's just very impressive. So there's so many moving parts. I'm trying to be high level just in terms of what I think could be most helpful at this stage.
I still cannot believe that this is happening. After all these years, he's returning to this beloved universe. This is quite good. And all these advices which he already gave it to us was quite precise and quite professional, because he sees some things which I don't see. That's the thing. Because all of this experience, some things comes just through experience. You should overcome it somehow. So this is priceless treasure.
I think the next step is obviously when we get to early access and most of the players start giving lots of feedback. I think that now is an exciting time for me, because being able to iterate in real time with consumers is something that I was never able to do with previous games. I would put it in a box and hope you like it. And if you send feedback, well, that'll be the sequel. There's not much I can do with the way we marketed and distributed games. So that's a very exciting to do that with the Heroes formula. I'm excited to see how that's gonna go.
That's what I was going to ask. Are you excited to be back kind of working on it? Because obviously, even like the advisory role is obviously working on it. I'm sure the team is looking forward to any words of wisdom you can have for them.
Yeah, and I have a lot I've already told them in the last few days I've been here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do going forward. Ask me anything is pretty much the starting position there.
I definitely think and believe that the game will become even better with his approach, and it's again, after all, I definitely believe that we are all should deeply respect him for all this awesome stuff and all these thousands of hours of amazing time which we spent with these awesome games.
All of this sounds really cool, and I actually can't wait to see how Jon will shape the future of Olden Era together with people who are looking up to him for so long. But since I had Denis on the couch, I couldn't not ask him about some things related to Olden Era. For example, it seems that the game is heavily shaped by the conversations that the developers have with the community surrounding the franchise.
One of the strongest aspects of Unfrozen is working with the community. We learn how to work with the people, we work with the community, how to learn. We got successful early access, some Kickstarters, some later early access, and we learned on each step how to work with the feedback and how to implement the feedback and which feedback you should implement to make the game successful. And I think, we still have this approach working on Olden Era when you respect the community, when you actively demonstrate to the people that you listen to them, they will respond to them, and in the end, hopefully they will respect you for this.
There's a lot of conversations going on around the game, and obviously there's a lot of iteration in the process. You can also see it in the fact that the game was supposed to be released in 2025 in early access, but it was delayed to 2026. The obvious question to ask here was, why?
Well, again, we're trying to learn, to listen to the community and trying to learn on the mistakes. And when there is a mistake, we're trying to fix it. Of course, it's common joke in the industry that you cannot finish the game. You can just release it. so yeah. But for Unfrozen, we have got a lot of feedback after announcement. And they changed it a lot, actually, changed it a lot. We're not waiting, for the disaster. When we see obvious problems, we're doing our best to fix it. And after we decided that we definitely need more time, but people was obviously quite angry that we are postponing the release, so we just decided, okay, let's give them the demo. But the demo, not just the demo, but rich demo, right? Not just, one map, 2 factions and so on. I don't like this approach. We wanted to demonstrate the project. So it's some kind of, it's funny, and that it's some kind of early access, before early access, and it's free. So you can just play the game and decide do you like it or not, and also throw the feedback. Right now it's tens of thousands of different feedback messages, right? And we are working with all of this. We have special people who are reacting on everything. So at the moment, we're trying to put as much as possible based on the users' feedback to the build before early access, and hopefully, and obviously preparing for early access. But we will continue all this story in early access. Of course, there is long road ahead of us.
Indeed, the road ahead is long, but the road that we already traveled is even longer. It's been over 30 years since the first Heroes game was released, and the franchise has been kept alive by so many entries to that series, so many spin-offs. There's even an official board game right now, which creates this interesting circle, as it was board games that actually inspired the creation of Heroes. The community around the game is as strong as ever. There's the fan-made expansion, Horn of the Abyss, that's now introduced 3 new towns into the game, with one heavily inspired by the infamous Forge that Jon mentioned. Actually, the 1.8 version has been released just recently, and you can download and play it for free as long as you have the original game. With all of that in mind, the question that remained to ask was, why is this franchise still alive today? What makes it so special?
Yeah, what is the magic of Heroes and why? I never would have thought it would have lasted that long. If anything, I thought the Might and Magic RPGs would have lasted longer, because they had already gone for 10 years before Heroes came around. But then once Heroes started to take off, I was like, wow, this could go on for a while. But I never expected the fans, and especially here in Poland, the stuff they've done and kept it alive with tournaments and custom content and added stuff. It's just, phenomenal to me that it's kept going. And maybe a little bit is, the industry moved away from turn-based games, and so the best turn-based games are the ones that stayed around, because that's what you could play. Maybe that's part of it. But I think there really was something we hit on just in terms of play and balance and fun that I think it really showed. That's what I wanted when I was developing it, and I think all of the team shared that same enthusiasm and passion when they were, all the pieces they did, and maybe that just collective created something that just kept lasting. But it's very flattering that has happened.
And so it is time to end. Huge thanks to Jon for the lengthy conversation, to Denis for talking to us about their current collaboration, and in general for making Unfrozen tackle such a project that looks really promising. Big shout out to the Polish magazine CD Action for inviting me to be a part of these talks. They've been huge supporters of the Heroes franchise in Poland for many, many years. And obviously, big thanks to all of you who made it to the end of the video, and I will leave you with a few final words straight from Jon to you. Goodbye.
Thank you all so very much, and I am so happy that this game and this series has brought so much fun and joy to so many people around the world. It means so much to me, and thank you. That's the greatest thing I can hope to say.